Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our new installment of our EPL Reads online program. We've been doing this since last October, where we meet monthly in this virtual space. We get a panel of Eugene Library employees to talk about some books that we want to recommend around a certain theme. So, um, we are a little bit past Valentine's Day. We decided to just go with love as our theme anyway. Let's face it, we all have kind of like a slippery relationship with time these days. So we figured, why the heck not? And you may think romance novels, and we're definitely going to be doing a little bit of that. We were pretty broad with the theme. Well, you're going to find some poetry in here, some nonfiction. There's comics. I believe we have at least one children's book as well. So we wanted to go broad with it, and I hope that you all enjoy it. And with that, why don't we get started? Mindy, I believe you're going first.
I am. So let's see. And one more. Okay. So I love love. I'm very excited because I am doing the romance. And one of my favorite things about romance is that you are guaranteed a happy ending. And this year, I think we could all use a happy ending. So without further ado, I will go into my first book. It's called Bedazzled. It's by Ryan LaSala, and it is a young adult contemporary romance about two teenage boys who are super into cosplay. So Rafi is the main character, and his mother is an artist, and she's a very snooty artiste, and she does not think that cosplay is a worthwhile artistic pursuit for her son, but he is determined to continue with his passion and to show her that he is the best. So he goes to this giant comic convention, and this year the theme is partners. So he and his best friend are competing, and he looks up, and who is across the way but his ex-boyfriend, who is not only there competing with his former good friend, but they've stolen his concept. And so he is just sort of crushed. His former boyfriend is Luca, who is bi, but he's in the closet because his mother's like, no, your father's going to freak out if he finds out you're gay. So Luca has been hiding his relationship with Rafi. He's been hiding his interest in cosplay. Like, he's trying to hide everything that could potentially brand him as gay, but it's really hurting him. And so they sort of have to end up working together and to get through this whole experience. My favorite thing about this book is that it is told in this sort of really interesting style. It starts out in the present, and as you're going through the comic convention, this 3-day convention, you're also going through the past. So you're watching their relationship and its ups and its downs, and like when it's up in the present, it's down in the past. When it's down in the past, it's up in the present. So it always kind of keeps you at the edge of that tinge of angst and hopeful potential. And it just, you have to keep reading. It's so wonderful. I really love it. And it's totally worth your time, even if you don't normally read young adult. But it's just super fun and really lovely. So check that one out. The next one that we're going to go with is called The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. This one is a contemporary, it's sort of a rom-com, funny story. Lonnie is the daughter of Brazilian immigrants, and she runs her own wedding planning service. When her groom leaves her at the altar, he sends like his brother to tell her, and she's just devastated and ends up blaming everything on the brother, the best, because he was the best man. And so you flash forward a couple of years, and now Lonnie is up for a spot at really fancy boutique hotel to be their exclusive wedding planner. And she's super excited about it until the last sort of part of the interview process is she has to work with their marketing team. Well, the marketing team is either the ex-fiance or his horrible best man brother. She chooses the lesser of two evils. She chooses the best man because she's like, he feels so guilty for breaking up my wedding that he is going to let me do whatever I want. But Max he's always respectful, but he's no pushover, and he respects her and himself too much to not give it the project his all. So they end up working together. It's super cute. They go to lots of different wedding locations and slowly kind of find their way to each other. And it's really lovely. One of my favorite parts about it is they spend a lot of time with her Brazilian family at the like bakery store that they own. And there's lots of Portuguese thrown in, and you really feel like you're there with them. So it's just a super fun, funny, and steamy read. And so that is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. The next one that I wanted to share with you guys is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics. My big complaint about Regency romance is it tends to all be straight white couples, and I don't know that there could possibly be that many dukes in the history of time. But this one is actually really fun. It's lesbians, and they are finding one another. So Lucy grew up studying astronomy with her father. She helped him do mathematical calculations and write a number of papers for him that won a lot of acclaim in the British scientific circles, but none of it got acknowledged as her work because it was, you know, she was like his daughter, his apprentice. And so after her father dies, she doesn't have a career of her own. And her brother is like, hey, I think it's time for us to marry you off. And she's devastated. She is not into men at all. So she runs away and ends up going to meet the Catherine, who's the Countess of Moth. She, who is at loose ends now that her controlling and frankly abusive husband has died. When he was alive, she traveled the world with him, funding his scientific expeditions. And but now that he's gone, her position in the scientific community is basically like, you be quiet and you give us money for us to fund our research. And so she's devastated, but she wants to fund this translation of a piece of writing by a famous French astronomer. And Lucy's like, please let me do it. Here I am. So they start working together and start to really, you know, they have this amazing attraction and chemistry, but they also find themselves in the same boat with a lot of women in the artistic and scientific community of the time where their skills, their work is not acknowledged. And so it's very like, smash the patriarchy, you know, up with women in science, let's be beautiful community. And it's a fun read, and I really enjoyed it. And they're just such a great couple. They're not dysfunctional. They're just lovely. They treat each other really nicely. So I liked that a lot too. It's really beautiful. The final book that I am presenting tonight is called A Cowboy to Remember by Rebecca Weatherspoon. So we had an elderly home delivery patron who always asked for more cowboy romance. And I ordered this book thinking specifically of her. And unfortunately, she passed away last year before she got to read it. And so I read this in her memory. This is for you. This is the story of a celebrity chef, Evie Buchanan, who suffers a complete memory loss after she's attacked by a rival. When she wakes up in a hospital surrounded by friends who are suddenly strangers, they help her decide to go into hiding while she recovers her memory. And they hope that if she goes back to like where she grew up, she'll, you know, it will spark something for her. So they call her last resort emergency contact Jesse Pleasant. But Jesse is not the man that she is seeing in her dreams. His brother Zach is. So Jesse and Zach show up and decide to take her back to the ranch that they own in Southern California and help her recover her memories, along with their grandma and a really amazing live-in nurse who takes care of her. And it's just this great story of like forgetting why you're mad at someone and trying to find a way to start fresh. And it was just really great. They were wonderful to each other. And I like reading books where people are nice to each other. So there's always this curiosity at the end, like, ooh, if she, you know, falls in love with him without her memories, will she be angry with him when her memories come back? And I think you have to go ahead and read that. So those are my books for the evening, and I'm set to pass it over to Wes, who has some amazing comics about people who love each other. Take her away, Wes.
Thanks, Mindy. Okay, my name is Wes. I do work in the youth services, so I have a variety of comics and graphic novels that I'd like to talk about. This is the first one I'd like to talk about. This book is called Crush by Svetlana Chimikova. Now, this is the third book in the Berrybrook Middle School series after Awkward and Brave. You don't have to read the other two first to understand this, but I do highly recommend reading them because the whole series is just wonderful. You'll really like the characters. The books bounce back and forth between the different friends. One of the things I really like about this series is it's drawn in the manga style, but it does read left to right, and it also is in full color, which most manga is not. Now, this book is about Jorge Ruiz. That's Jorge right there. Now, Jorge, he's an athlete, and he's a really big guy. But he's also very quiet. And most people don't mess with him because they're kind of afraid of him because he's this big, quiet guy. He's kind of known as the sheriff in the halls because just by walking up into a situation, people automatically chill out and don't cause trouble because they're afraid, they're not sure what this big guy's going to do. His two best friends are Olivia and Garrett. He does have his own little squad. Now, the only thing that throws him off of his cool, calm demeanor is when he's around this girl, Jasmine Duong. Now, he gets really shy and has trouble speaking. So here's a little example of what he's doing. He agrees to help out with this clothing drive at the school. He goes in there. Jasmine sees him. She's like, "Oh, Jorge, you're here. We're so happy to see you." He's like, he doesn't know what to do. She just kind of looks at him with a question. Olivia's like, "Dude, are you going to help out or just stand there?" So he grabs a box and goes. And he's saying, "I can form words. Hey, Jasmine, how's it going?" Just like that, but out loud. So unfortunately for Jorge, she has a boyfriend who is a total jerk and a dweeb. So how is he ever going to get her to the athletic ball? So you'll have to read and find out. And being a middle school book, there is lots of drama, but there's also a lot of humor in these books. So I really recommend you read it, and you could find out how it all comes together. The next book I want to talk about, now this is a different type of love. This is the love between two sisters. We have older sister Wendy and younger sister Maureen. And as sisters are, they get along really well, you could see, but also in the picture in the back, you could see the shadows. They're fighting each other because that's what siblings do. The nice thing about this comic, though, is even though they do have their moments, they do really love each other, and they are always there for each other. So it makes for a really sweet comic book. There are 6 books in this series. This is the first one, Just Like Family. Now, each book, each page in the book is a contained comic strip, so it's not like one long continuous story. Here is the picture of the two sisters together. So you can see they're playing, having a good time. This is the bond they have with each other. Oh, okay. I thought I would share this comic. It kind of gives you a good example of that. Their dynamic. Here they are trying to get to go somewhere. Maureen is not dressed. She's sulking. Wendy's like, come on, we're going to leave in a minute. Mom's going to get mad at you. What's wrong with you? She's like, you have more clothes than I do. So she's like trying to toss her clothes, get her dressed. Finally, she's like, will you get going? Maureen's all like, I hate all my clothes. But Wendy, being the big sister, she's like, tell you what, sweetie, would you like to wear my clothes? So here in the final picture, the mom walks in. Here's Maureen dressed in Wendy's clothes, but now she's not dressed. The mom's like, Wendy, why aren't you ready to go? And here's little sister happy as a clown going, this is just what I wanted. So it's a beautiful relationship between them. My next book is a manga for teenagers. This one, Go For It, Nakamura by Sunday. Now, this is a manga about a high school boy named Okuto Nakamura. Now, he has a secret crush on his classmate, Aiko Hirose. And here you can see the little pictures of Hirose all around him. Now, this book is a very sweet rom-com. I really enjoyed it. Now, Nakamura, he's a very shy, introverted, and he actually hasn't spoken to Hirose, but he fantasizes about speaking to him and them getting close. So Nakamura, he comes up with these schemes to try and get himself close to Hirose so that they could talk and maybe get to know each other and become friends. He would like to take it further since he has such a crush on him. But unfortunately, Nakamura is a major klutz. So most of his little schemes usually end up in some type of comedic failure and embarrassment for him. Here's a little part of the book where he first meets Hirose accidentally. So here they run into each other and Nakamura panics and runs away. Zoom. He's like, ah. And here he is like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't talk to him. Hirose is just kind of like, what just happened? Nakamura's just like, I can't breathe. I can't even be near him, but he's so cute. So I really like this manga because as the book does go on, you could see Nakamura grow and he starts becoming more confident the more he does get close to Hirose and talk to him. And it has a really sweet ending that I hope sets up a sequel. So I hope you read this one. I really enjoyed this one. My next book, which is also in the teen section, this is Gudetama, Love for the Lazy. This book is by Wook Jin Clark. So this book is for those who need help with their schemes and want to catch the eye of their crush. There's Gudetama, everyone's favorite lazy egg. In this book, each story is only a couple of pages long as he answers the call of those in need of romantic advice. But Gudetama, being kind of a lazy guy, he usually just kind of does the bare minimum. But he does have some good advice because most of his advice kind of is just telling people to relax and be themselves. Now, I chose this one part because this is one of the funniest examples, I thought. Here's this young man. He's got a suit. He's going on a blind date, but he's like, oh, I don't like this. This is not me. What am I going to do? Gudetama comes out of his pocket. He's like, relax. Just wear what you normally wear. Be yourself. So here he is. He goes and changes. He walks into the cafe. There he is at the door. There's his blind date waiting for him. And what is he dressed like? Let me get this off. Boom. And he's like, good day, fair lady. I am Martin of Peachtree City, son of Marcus. A pleasure to meet thee. His date's down here going, spitting out water. She stands up. She throws off her cloak and hat, and she's like, greetings, sir. My true name is inaudible to human ears, but you may call me Winnie. It's the name I was given by my land guardians. So at the end, they are in the back having a good time, being themselves. Gudaton was like, thank goodness that worked out. So this is a really fun book. He gives all sorts of crazy advice to different people for different love situations, and I think you will like it. My final book, this is called Soppy, a love story by Philippa Rice. And even though this is in the teen section, I think this is a book that anybody who has lived with somebody, spent time with somebody can relate to. So it's good for, I think, a lot of ages. It's a very sweet book. What it says on the back of the book pretty much sums it up how I feel. So I think I'm just going to read that. It says, true love isn't always about big romantic gestures. Sometimes it's about sympathizing with someone whose tea has gone cold, or reading together and sharing a quilt. When two people move in together, it soon becomes apparent that the little things mean an awful lot. The throwaway moments in life become meaningful when you spend them in the company of someone you love. Now, I like the artwork. It's very striking because it's all just red and black ink on white pages. And there's also very minimal text. A lot of it is just pictures. So here are a couple pictures you could see kind of example. Here they are sitting on the couch with a quilt, sharing books together. Here they are sitting on the grass, enjoying some ice cream. Here they are taking a nice walk in the park. And this one is funny. He's like, looks like he's getting ready to kiss her on the cheek. And instead, he's kissing his pillow. And she's like, what are you doing? He's like, I was half asleep. I thought the pillow was you. And she's like, I'm jealous. So very sweet book. I think anyone would enjoy this. That is it for my comic selections. Now I'll be turning it over to Amy, who has a really nice selection of fiction and nonfiction for young adults and adults.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Wes. I am Amy. I work at the Sheldon Branch Library. And as Wes said, I will be sharing some fiction and nonfiction. So let's get started. Okay, so my first book here is a young adult novel. And this is a companion book to the award-winning Darius the Great is Not Okay. So this is the second book. This one has a little bit more romance in it. So I wanted to talk about this one today. But if you haven't read Darius the Great is Not Okay, I so highly recommend it. It won a lot of awards when it came out in 2018. Both are excellent. So in Darius the Great Deserves Better, which came out last year, a lot has changed since the first book. So Darius now has his first boyfriend, Landon. He's playing on the varsity high school soccer team. He has an internship at his favorite tea shop. So everything seems to be going pretty well for Darius, but then things start to become a bit more complicated. His parents are having money trouble. He thinks he really likes Landon, but then he starts having feelings for a teammate. His internship is now not really going as he thought it would. And then his grandmas have moved in to help out the family. His dad's been away for work a lot. And so the grandmas move in, but they're kind of aloof. And he's starting to wonder if they even really like him very much. So he's got a lot to work through. And this book goes a bit deeper with some of the themes that were explored in the first book. Some of these include mental illness, racism, bullying, toxic masculinity. So some pretty heavy topics. It's not an especially plot-heavy book. It's more focused on the relationships in Darius's life. One thing that I particularly love about this one is the relationship development between the first and the second book, between Darius and his father. So this book maybe has one of my favorite portrayals of a father-son relationship, possibly in anything I've read. It's outstanding. It's really moving. This is also a book that takes place in Portland, so that's really fun. I'd recommend this one to high school students, probably 14 and above, and certainly I think adults could definitely enjoy it as well. This book just really has a lot of heart. It's very moving, very heartwarming. And I love both of them. As I've said, I really hope that we get to see more of Darius's story in the future. And I don't think I said the author for this one. This is Adib Khorram. So these are his first two books, I believe. So we've got this one on audiobook and ebook for Library to Go, and then we have physical copies at the library as well. So definitely check this one out. The next one I'll be talking about here is The Book of Delights by Ross Gay. Ross Gay is a poet. He has lots of great, wonderful poetry. He's also a gardener. And on his 42nd birthday, he sets out to write a short essay each day about a particular delight he encounters. His Book of Delights contains around 100 of these short essays. Many of these delights involve small but meaningful interactions with strangers, and they get at the interconnectedness of people, of non-human animals, the natural world. And at the beginning of the book, he writes, and I absolutely love this, quote, "It didn't take me long to learn that the discipline or practice of writing these essays occasioned a kind of delight radar. Or maybe it was more like the development of a delight muscle. Something that implies that the more you study delight, the more delight there is to study. I felt my life to be more full of delight, not without sorrow or fear or pain or loss, but more full of delight. I also learned this year that my delight grows, much like love and joy when I share it." End quote. So reading this book has definitely helped me to strengthen my own delight muscle, which has been super important this year, of course, this past year, when so much is hard and unknown. This book was so refreshing to read right now. And I know that I've been much more intentional lately about savoring this sort of small everyday joys and just the interactions I get to have with people sometimes at the library included. Gay's writing is meditative and joyful and gorgeous, and I really cannot recommend this one enough. It's so good. I read this one when it first came out in 2019, but I listened to it recently, and the audiobook is absolutely outstanding. Gay is the narrator, and it's a total delight in itself just to listen to him read these essays. So we have this one, I think, in all formats. We've got physical copies at the library, but you can also get it on audiobook or ebook through Library to Go and Hoopla. So Hoopla, you can listen to it right away. It's instant, so definitely worth checking that one out. My next one here is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. And this one came out in 2020, so pretty recently. I think it came out in March last year. It received a lot of acclaim. It was on a lot of like best of 2020 lists. This one is set in New England in 1997, and it's told from the perspective of Casey Peabody. Casey is 31 years old, and she's got a lot going on. So her mother died recently and totally unexpectedly. She's being crushed by student loan debt and bills that she can't keep up with. She's a waitress. She's living in a moldy converted gardening shed. She's recently been dumped, and she's struggling to finish a novel that she's been working on for 6 years. So there's a lot. Suddenly, though, she finds herself dating two extremely different men. They're in very different stages of their lives. Both are fellow writers. And she's left trying to decide what she wants from these men, and really kind of more broadly from her life. She's doing a lot of reflection. So some of this may sound just a little bit cliche. I didn't find that it actually read that way at all, though. The writing is outstanding. I found the narrative voice to be super compelling and quite relatable. This book is, like, to a great extent about Casey's grief over losing her mother. But it's also a late coming of age novel, and there's a lot of funny moments, and there are a lot of romantic moments as well. So I just found myself really liking Casey a lot. I really was rooting for her success, or just to kind of figure some stuff out. And she's navigating a lot, from love to loss to really her identity as a writer too. That's a big part of the book. So this one, we've got a lot of physical copies at the library. And then we have it also in both audiobook and ebook on Library to Go and Hoopla. So that one's available everywhere through the library. My final book here that I'll be talking about, nonfiction. This one is Infused: Adventures in Tea by Henrietta Lovell. And this one really at its heart is a love letter to tea. So bit of a specific topic here, but it was absolutely wonderful. It's really about kind of the process and the people and the land that support sustainable tea growing. So Lovell, who has, through her work over many, many years, received the title The Tea Lady. And she is the founder of the Rare Tea Company, which is a London-based company that sources tea directly from gardeners, tea gardeners around the world. Lovell's book, which is really part memoir and part like adventure tale, documents some of her travels to tea farms around the world, from Taiwan to Nepal to Malawi to South Africa. She goes all over the world. It's super fun. I've been seeking out travel narratives right now. I know for some people they are having a hard time with that during the pandemic because they can't travel. But it's been a good escape for me to read some of these more adventure tale type of stories. So woven within these accounts, she shares lots of fascinating information about the tea farmers, the pickers, the masters. I learned so much about the tea growing process. And there's a lot about kind of the differences in types of tea and how things like environmental factors impact the leaves. So her chapters also, many of them contain recipes for making the teas she's talking about, and infusions and lots of different things. It's really fun. And the physical book has these gorgeous color photos from her travels as well. So I recommend the physical book for this one, although I'm sure the audiobook is good too. I haven't listened to it. If you care nothing about tea, this probably is not going to be one for you. Maybe it would be a harder one to get into. But I'm a sucker for food writing and food memoirs. I read them fairly regularly. This is my first time, though, reading a book about tea, or probably any beverage. And it was such a wonderful read. Her levels of enthusiasm and her passion for good tea is infectious. And you might just be persuaded to stop drinking with tea bags in favor of loose leaf tea. I haven't sworn off tea bags completely, but she's made a very compelling case for why loose leaf tea is the way to go. Much more complexity there with the flavor. So as I was reading this book, I was also inspired to buy a very happy, sunny yellow teapot. And one of my great delights lately has been to drink a pot of tea from my new yellow teapot every day. That's been super, super nice, especially right now with all the rain. So really recommend this one. We've got a physical copy at the library, and then it's available on audiobook through Hoopla as well. So I think that is it for me. Thank you for letting me share those with you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Wendy, who will be sharing some poetry and fiction with us. Thanks.
Hello, hi everybody, and welcome to this section of poetry and one novel. And I know when I say poetry, that does send some people screaming from the room, but don't stay. I promise it'll be worth it. So before I get into the poetry, though, I've got some books of poetry that are thematic, one book of poetry that's standalone, and I have a novel, and they're all for adults, although young adults might enjoy some of these as well. So, and they are all at the library. I mostly have my own copies here, but I double checked and they are at the library as well, or will come to the library shortly. So with all those caveats, I'll start with my first selection, and it is called The Passion by Jeanette Winterson. And it is a fantastic novel. It's got some magical realism in it. It's got some history. It's an adventure novel, and it's most certainly a love story. And it's not a typical love story. Winterson writes books that are, strange things happen. You think like this book literally has somebody's heart in a box because they didn't want to give it away to anybody but somebody they believed in and trusted. So that's interesting. And, people fly and just webbed feet, come into play. And it's fantastic. I had a housemate in college who loaned me his copy. And this happened to be a term where he said, "You like literature, you'll love this. It's like poetry, but it's also prose." So he said, "Take your time with it." So it was a term where I was reading like 6 books a week. I stupidly took like 5 literature classes, that term. And so I was just sort of like flying through books. So I think I flew through this in like a weekend. I'm like, yeah, I was good. And he's like, "You didn't take your time. It's so beautiful. You have to sink into it and move with it." So I took him at his word. And a few months later, when I had some breathing space, I took my time with it, and it has subsequently become one of my favorite novels. So the story is very loosely about 2 people who meet fatedly during the Napoleonic War. It starts out with Henri's story. Henri is very short, and so he is Napoleon's kind of lead cook or lead server. But he longs for a bigger experience. He's 20 years old. He's left his home for the first time, and he's very much kind of he's tied to his family. He cried when he left. He's not really a soldier, but it was just what you had to do. So he leaves in this very difficult journey to try to kind of help the war effort. But it's also just he didn't have much of a choice, and he's just a very sweet, kind character who has to deal with a lot of hardships. The second part of the book, it's really 3 parts. The second part, you meet Villanelle, and Villanelle is a boatman's daughter in Venice. She also operates the roulette table at a gambling house, at a casino. And casinos at the time, and still in Europe, are not like the ones you might find, say, in Nevada. They're much fancier and more, dressy and more opulent. So she falls in love with a noblewoman who comes in one day to gamble. And her part of the story is about having to deal with this married lover of hers, that it's her destiny to be with this woman, and realizing that of course she can't, because this woman has a life someplace else. So they have a short time together, but it's just a very passionate time. The third part of the novel, Henri and Villanelle meet, and Henri realizes that he loves Villanelle. He loves her, more than he's ever loved anything. And while Villanelle likes Henri, she doesn't love him. And so their stories become intertwined, and it's just gorgeous. I highly recommend it. I have a couple little sections. There's one that just gives you, and of course I won't read all of it, so you're not ready to snooze, but just a couple little bits of the prose that highlight. I mean, I could probably just close my eyes and pick a line and be like, that one's perfect, but just a couple. And little stories will show up within the larger stories, and it's not confusing. It's just a nice little break, maybe, from one story to the next. And so this one says, there was in a certain city where the climate was fine, a young Jewish man who loved to drink his coffee at the pavement cafes and watch the world go by. He saw sailors and travelers and women with swans in their hair and all manner of fanciful distractions. One day he saw a young woman flying past, her clothes flying out behind her. She was beautiful, and because he knew that beauty makes us good, he asked her to stop a while and share his coffee. I'm running away, she said. Who are you running away from? Myself. But she agreed to sit a while because she was lonely. They talked about the mountain ranges and the opera. They talked about animals with metal coats that can swim the length of a river without coming up for air. They talked about the valuable, fabulous thing that everybody has and keeps a secret. Here, said Salvador, look at this. He took out a box enameled on the outside and softly lined on the inside, and on the inside was his heart. Give me yours in exchange. But she couldn't because she was not traveling with her heart. It was beating in another place. She thanked the young man and went back to her husband, whose hands crept over her body like crabs. And the young man thought often of a beautiful woman on that sunny day when the wind had pushed out her earrings like fins. And you're just like, oh, let me swoon and reread that 20 different times. It's so fantastic. And there's just so many beautiful points that you'll go back to and read over and over again. Highly recommend it. It's got adventure. It's got everything. Intrigue, murder. There's murder. So, it's everything. And it has love. So, I mean, it's called The Passion. So you've got to go with that. Wonderful book. And we have it at the library. So next one, an interlude, poetry. Okay, so I understand that some people have a real aversion to poetry, but I think that's just because the teacher that you had that first introduced you to it gave you the wrong selection. So not liking poetry to me is kind of like not saying, oh, I don't like food. Sure, yeah, you don't like certain food. Like I'm not in love with peas, for example. But there are other foods I love. And likewise, there are a million different kinds of poems. Funny ones, short ones, floral ones, translations. What I'm going to show you now, it's a really fun collection, poetry in the kind of very loose sense of the word. We've got love poems for The Office. These are all by John Kenny. We have love poems for anxious people. And we have love poems for married people. And this was the first in the selection. We have this at the library right now. I have one copy. I think there's one on the shelf. The other two copies, I'm going to take them to the library in a couple of days, and then we will get them cataloged and you can check them out yourself. But they are all very tongue-in-cheek, very sarcastic, love poems in a very loose way. So I will read you just a few of these really quickly. They're all hilarious and they are all very sarcastic. So if you're looking for a poem that will make you swoon and, show your beloved, you have to show them one of these if they have a sense of humor. So there's one this is from Love Poems for Married People. So sometimes he'll start with these very kind of light, sort of like, you're looking at me from across the room. I noticed you have spinach in your teeth. So it kind of will send up the, kind of typical love poem. This one, you sort of thought of me. Thank you for thinking of me, sort of, on my birthday. You asked me what I wanted, and I said, oh, nothing. But you asked again, and I said, jewelry might be nice. Earrings, maybe. Diamond ones, you said, with a sly smile. And I smiled, too. And then it was my birthday, and you gave me a gift card to Banana Republic. I think they have jewelry there, you said. They sure do, but not diamonds. Thank you. So that's a love poem for married people. So yeah, there's a lot of hilarious, sarcastic poems in here. So see already, poems can be funny. Love poems for anxious people. I love this collection because I am. So it's always, I'm like, this poem speaks to me. No, wait, this poem speaks to me. I love the intro. So the dedication at the beginning is perfect. It says to. Well, there are so many people I should dedicate this book to, but I can't seem to pick one. What if I make the wrong choice or offend someone? This is a nightmare. So that's flippin' hilarious. And again, the poems are a pace. Anything. If you look at some of these titles, you've got incredibly relaxed at the beach with the kids, but not really. Or do you find my anxiety sexy? Also, what I should not have said to my new boss on the phone. This one starts out with, here comes someone whose name I should know. We've met so many times, you and I, and yet I have no idea what your name is as I stand frozen, insanely grinning. Do you have a name? Here you come smiling, calling my name as well as the names of my wife, children, and dog, Fortinbras, which I kind of can't believe you remember. My God, you're almost here. And I'll need to introduce you to the person next to me, who may be Beth or Valentina. I'm not sure. Here's a quick thought. What if I just start running? That would be a weird thing to do, though, at a children's birthday party. But what not as weird as what I ended up doing, stuffing 2 cupcakes into my mouth so as not to be able to speak. But I almost immediately choke, spewing frosting on your face. Oh, his name is Alan. It's Alan, which I will now never forget. So, hilarious, hilarious poems. Can't go wrong. And the last one is love poems for the office or wherever. There's a little glare there. So anyway, same guy. And I will just read, the intro is quite funny. A quote from Bertrand Russell. One of the symptoms of an approaching nervous breakdown is the belief that one's work is terribly important. So, obviously I think my work's terribly important, but I am glad that in my job, I don't have to worry about somebody dying if I do something wrong. So that's good. That probably goes in the anxious love poem section. This one it starts out, and I won't read it all, but it starts out, who keeps stealing my yogurt? The first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering, and that suffering has a cause. It's called craving or attachment. I should mention here, I'm not a Buddhist. I read all this stuff on a Snapple cap once. My point is that I am suffering as I was very attached to my 3 p.m. snack. You all know this. And yet, even though I have clearly marked my snacks, Elaine's snack, do not touch, you take them. I think it was you, Greg, or possibly Tracy. I will find out. That was a Chobani yogurt you stole, you sons of bitches. So anyway, these are all just delightfully funny, and you can just plow through them. And it is poetry. It's a kind of poetry. So if you're like, I hate poetry, it's terrible, try some of these books. I promise you will be rewarded for your money back. Okay, so final recommendation here. It's a true book of poetry, but again, it's not frou-frou. It's very sensual, very beautiful, and a lot of it deals with Li Young Lee's family, who emigrated from China via Indonesia in the 60s. It's called The City in Which I Love You by Li Young Lee. Here's on the back, intense looking fellow. He came and read at the U of O some years ago, and great reading, but I couldn't get over the fact that he sounded like Christopher Walken. It was a very interesting, whom I also love. So that's exciting. But it was a very disturbing sort of, I was like, oh, he sounds so much like Christopher Walken. Anyway, he's written other books of poetry since, which are fantastic. He has a very lyrical way of describing, a lot has to do, his father was Chairman Mao's personal physician, and was always kind of there for him, but also very aloof. He was a scholar who didn't have a lot of time for him. He writes in this book about his wife, about his children. He writes about love and heartbreak and loss, and also just day-to-day things, but how they can be infused with beauty and love and passion as well. There are so many places I could probably read you things, and some that are more adult in nature, certainly fantastic and not just maybe not for recording. But there's this wonderful poem that's called A Final Thing. And it's about, he's in bed and he's the last person to get up in his family. His wife's awake and his very young son is awake. And he's just listening to them talk. And it's such a lovely little just slice of life. And a lot of his poems have to do with memory. Like, I see this now, I'm going to remember it for later. So the final thing starts, and I will just kind of zip through parts of it, not all of it. He starts with, I am that last, that final thing, the body in a white sheet listening. The whole of me trained, curled like one great ear on a sound, a noise I know, a woman talking in another room, the woman I love. And though I can't hear her words, by their voicing, I can guess she's telling a story. A saying full of hearing, a murmuring full of telling, and compassion for the listener for what's being told. Now interrupted by a second voice, thinner, higher, uncertain. My son, my firstborn, and his mother are involved in a story no longer theirs, for now I am implicated. All three of us now clinging to expectancy, riding through sound and air. Will my first morning of heaven be this? No, and this is not my last morning on earth. I am simply last in my house to waken, and the first sound I hear is the voice of one I love, speaking to one we love. I hear it through the bedroom wall. Something, someday, I'll close my eyes to recall. And they are all just so lovely. You're like, I could, again, close my eyes and just flip it up in the air and read a line. And it's just so moving and wonderful. So I can't recommend Lee Young Lee enough. He's a really good writer. Anything you read, he's got some essays as well that are fantastic. But this one is a great place to start, and we have it at the library. So I do highly recommend it. All right, and that is it for my recommendations. I am now going to pass the mic, if you will, on to Andy, who's got some fabulous recommendations and will round out our evening. So go for it, Andy.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I get to take us home tonight. Thank you, everybody who recommended. We'll bring everyone back on screen for just a moment when we all say goodbye, but I've certainly added to be read list. Yeah, just good stuff. So I wanted to start, I'm kind of known as like, I try to shoehorn Stephen King into everything I do, and today is no exception. So I would just like to quickly just kind of plug The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. You may be wondering, Andy, why are you recommending this 21-year-old book, aside from the fact that I just happened to be reading it and it has love in the title? This is kind of a under the radar Stephen King book. It's about 9-year-old Trisha McFarlane who gets lost in the woods. And that's pretty much it. We follow her as she kind of realizes that she is in a little bit of trouble, and but she is smart and resourceful, and we kind of do this like deep dive into her psyche as she survives in the woods for, I think it's about a week or so, and she has a Walkman that tunes into the Red Sox games. And this book takes place firmly in 1999 when Tom Gordon was the Red Sox closer. I'm also a native from Massachusetts, huge Red Sox fan. So somehow I had never read this book, and I actually just got around to it. It's a great book for new Stephen King readers, I would say. It has a good young adult crossover appeal. And it is about love in many ways. We sort of zoom out and we see what's going on with Trisha's family. Her mom and dad are divorced. They're trying to navigate kind of a post-divorce family, situation. And she has an older brother. So very much about familial love, about, our passions when we're kids, about, baseball and how we latch on to certain players. And also just like a thrilling read. Trisha's being stalked by something in the woods that might be supernatural. It might just be a big old bear. We're not really sure until you get to the end. And guess what? There's going to be a movie adaptation. That's actually part of the reason why I wanted to recommend this, because I think it's going to be coming back into the public consciousness fairly soon, because there's going to be a film adaptation, and I'm really excited for that. So a bit of a stretch, I admit, but I just wanted to, make sure I do my due diligence and make sure Stephen King gets in there, because I'm always reading or rereading his stuff. So that's The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. Okay, so my next one was actually recommended by our wonderful children's librarian, Rachel, in the most anticipated reads of last month. And I went ahead and read it. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and so I read her this book called Outside Inside by Lewin Pham, and this is a book about coronavirus. It doesn't mention COVID by name in the book, which I think is a really interesting subtle touch. And it's all about why in the spring of 2020 everybody went inside and stopped seeing each other, and what that means. And it's a really lovely book. I'll just hold up the cover again so you can get a sense for the illustrations. My daughter, I think, is kind of the perfect age for it, because she's really starting to get to the point now where she's asking questions about, why we don't Oh, there she is right now. Why we don't, she's on the toilet right now, apparently. So anyway, that's her, that's Liddy. So she's been asking some questions, and I found this book to be really lovely. It explains how familial love will get us through this difficult time and how we stay connected with our families any way we can, but also about how we're all, by staying inside or physically distanced, that we're doing the right thing for everybody, because we don't just love ourselves, but we love our fellow humans. And so we're trying to protect everybody and just do what's right until this passes. So it's a really lovely book that is outside, inside. Rachel's recommendations, unsurprisingly, are spot on. Sorry, I'm trying to get focused in the camera. It never seems to quite work, but that's fine. So, and then I just have one more for you, and let me get this banner down and get my last one up. Here we go. So this one hits pretty close to home for me as well. It's called Go to Sleep, I Miss You. Cartoons. Here we go. Let's get it in the phone. Yeah. Cartoons from the Fog of New Parenthood by Lucy Knisley. I mentioned I have a 3-year-old. You just heard her. Possibly it's with this house is an echo chamber, so that was her. My wife is also due with our second child, literally any time now. Could be right after we finish this program. I'm just, we're just waiting. So this book is all about, as you may have seen, New Parenthood. A friend of ours sent it in the mail, and my wife and I both blew through it in like a day. We kept finding cartoons in here, and then finding the other person and be like, "Oh my God, you have to read this one. This one's so funny." It's a really light read. It's nothing. There's no narrative. There's nothing too heavy to it. It's just kind of these sketches of what it's like to be a new parent and to have an infant. And some of them are just one tiny little illustration and some words. Some of them are totally wordless and just a drawing. It very much is like a sketchbook, but taken all the, you go read through the whole thing, it kind of just it forms this kind of very clear picture of what what you can expect in your first year of parenthood or so. So I really appreciate it for that, and I definitely recommend you check it out if you have a baby coming, just had a baby, know somebody who might be having a baby, or even if you have older kids and you just want to maybe relive some of those early days. It's really neat. And I wanted to share one here. I mean, this is very much Lucy, the author's book. She is it's a lot of her with the baby. So I don't want to misrepresent a little bit here, but this is a really funny one with an exhausted dad that I really kind of hit home for me. So I hope no one minds if I share that one. I'll show you the picture quickly, and I'll read you the words afterwards. So that's the picture there. You see that the baby is just causing havoc. Dad is tired. And he says, "Dude, I love you so much, but could you please stop discovering the infinite wonder of the world for 2 minutes?" And so I think, I think we all, anyone with a younger kid probably can relate. So one more time, I'll just hold up the cover here. Go to Sleep, I Miss You. Just the title is so spot on. I can't recommend it enough. It is in the library. So I hope you all will check that out. And let me get rid of my banner here. And that is it for our recommendations tonight. So everyone else is gonna come back on screen. Okay. Let's get Wendy in here too. Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I just wanted to make sure to remind anyone watching who sees this later that we do have all the videos are still on the channel from our past What to Read Next panels. So definitely check those out. It's been going since October, and there are more to come, and we are excited for that. So thanks for watching, and good night.
Good night.
Bye.